Vandals target the 55-plus center. The restricted fire zone remains in place. And summer students get a lesson in fire safety.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The 55-plus center has been forced to temporarily close after it was targeted by vandals overnight.
Dozens of windows were smashed, forcing the center to cancel all of its events and activities planned for the weekend. Joe Sadowski joins us live in studio with more details. Joe.
Thanks, Ryan. The vandals threw rocks, breaking 33 windows and 3 doors at the property. There's also some interior damage. Crews were on hand today to clean up the glass and debris. It's still unclear how much the damage will cost to repair. The 55-plus center is usually alive with older adults participating in a variety of recreational activities. But today, the only activity is that of cleanup crews and staff working to repair a massive amount of damage to the property. Police arrived early Friday morning after the building attendant was the first on the scene to report the incident.
Well, this morning when we came in, our building attendant is first to arrive on scene, and he identified the broken windows and contacted myself, and of course we were very upset.
Contractors are now working to repair the damage and clean up the debris. That process could take 2 to 3 days.
We're hoping so. We're going to see how everything goes this weekend because there is a lot of glass inside the center and a lot of the rooms, so we have to wait for that to be completely cleared before we can open our doors again.
The center is expected to reopen on Monday, but the windows will take substantially longer to fix because new ones won't arrive for at least 3 weeks.
Well, they have to be measured and ordered, so I'm unsure of that. So right now all we can do is put the wood over the windows to close them for now, and then we'll wait for them to come in to be replaced. We're hoping to open back up on Monday, but the wood might be on the windows at that time.
There was no security footage of the incident. The city is working with Thunder Bay Police to investigate the incident. Joe Sadowski, TBT News.
Over 1,000 Hydro One customers north of Thunder Bay are without power this afternoon. Customers in Lappy, Gorham, and parts of the Highway 527 corridor are without power, according to the utility's online outage map. Hydro One says the power went out around 3:30 this afternoon. Crews are working to address the issue and expect it to be resolved around 7 o'clock. It's still unclear what caused the outage.
Despite some recent rain and more in the forecast, there's no plan to lift the fire ban that's been in place in our region for more than a month. There are currently 62 active fires across the Northwest, including 11 that aren't yet under control. Fire Information Officer Allison Bazubiak says none of the fires are threatening communities at this time, and while 4 wildfires were put out earlier today, there are still concerns about dry ground conditions and lightning.
Forest fuels are still very dry and susceptible to holdover ignition from lightning and could result in more problematic fire behavior. Scattered precipitation is often accompanied by lightning, which can strike a tree or other forest fuels and ignite a fire under the forest floor. Once the weather dries up, winds can increase, temperatures can rebound, and holdover lightning fires from convective activity can appear up to about a week later.
The fire hazard level has been reduced to moderate across much of the region, and it's still high to extreme in some areas, including around Thunder Bay and near the southern Manitoba border.
1 person is dead after a house fire in Pikangikum First Nation on Tuesday morning. 11 others, including children, were safely evacuated from the home. It's the second fatal house fire to devastate the remote community this year. Chief Shirley Keeper credits the quick actions of local peacekeepers and firefighters for saving so many lives.
It's been an annual tradition for nearly 150 years, but not one that Fort William First Nation members want to continue.
Every year, they get a $4 annuity payment from the federal government for resources extracted from their traditional land. But Fort William and other Robinson Superior Treaty communities are in court trying to increase that. The Silos Bellows reports.
Collecting a $4 annuity payment from Indigenous Services Canada has become a yearly event for many members of Fort William First Nation. It's compensation from the government for resources extracted on traditional First Nation land. But as you'd expect, there's a strong push to increase that minuscule payment after nearly 150 years.
It's been $4 a year since 1874.
Fort William First Nation and other Robinson Superior Treaty First Nations are challenging the government to increase the $4 payment. Chief Michelle Solomon says that would be a small step towards addressing significant injustices against these communities.
The First Nations have been left in what I would call economic marginalization by not having their fair share of that revenue that has been established as a result of the resource extraction.
Robinson Huron Treaty Communities recently struck a $10 billion settlement with Canada and Ontario. Solomon won't say what she believes is fair for Robinson Superior Treaty Communities, but she hopes this is the last time her community members will collect a $4 payment.
Perhaps we can look forward to a more appropriate revenue sharing agreement or treaty agreement that does justice to the resource extraction that has happened.
Nobody who picked up their annuity payment on Friday was willing to speak on camera, but there's common frustration that the $4 payment hasn't increased since 1874. Closing arguments in the annuity case are scheduled to be heard in Thunder Bay in September. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Ottawa and the province have reached a historic flood claims settlement with two First Nation communities.
It's a $157 million agreement with Big Grassy and the Ojibways of Onigaming First Nations. Carl Langdon has the details.
The historic flooding problems on the Big Grassy and Ojibways of Onigaming First Nations dates back to the late 1800s, when two dams were built on Lake of the Woods, causing the communities to lose lands to floodwaters.
It was a long journey to reach a fair, just, final settlement.
A $157 million settlement between the communities, Ottawa, and the province of Ontario was marked at the Athabasca Ojibwe Heritage Park on Wednesday. Ontario Indigenous Affairs Minister Greg Rickford took part in the signing ceremony.
Well, it's an important step in reconciliation. Far too often these kinds of claims have taken too long. Our government, under the leadership of Premier Ford, is committed to making sure that we sign off on these claims and we move forward.
No representatives from the federal government were on hand. Chief Lynn Indian of Big Grassy and Chief Jeffrey Copenus of the Ojibways of Onigaming acknowledge the importance of this settlement, but Copenus notes that there are still issues that continue to threaten his community, that senior levels of government have failed to adequately address.
So again, we're begging Minister Rickford while he's here today to help us. We need safe, sober crisis beds. We need infrastructure in Onigaming, not in Kenora, not in Fort Francis. We need it right in our First Nation communities, and we're just not seeing that help coming right now. So we're determined. We're determined to use some investments from this flooding agreement to do the work ourselves, to save the young people ourselves, to treat them themselves.
Still, he acknowledges that this is a first step.
We have an opportunity to work together, from safe crisis beds to safe injection sites to regulated, legalized drugs. We have an opportunity to save lives, and that's what I hope that the minister has heard from my remarks today.
Copenus is also calling for the peaceful occupation of Kenora's Anishinaabe Park next year, honoring the 1972 protest regarding the mistreatment of Indigenous peoples in Canada and which brought awareness of industrial mercury contamination in the region. The health consequences of that contamination are still being felt today. Carl Langdon, TBT News.
A musical has kicked off Magnus Theatre's latest season. Mama's Country Record Collection has hit the stage at Magnus's new and improved Park Outdoor Theatre.
It follows a father and daughter who are left to clean out a massive collection of country music records after the passing of the family's matriarch. Mama's Country Record Collection features some of the biggest country hits from the 1960s and 70s. That will be recognizable to many, even if they aren't a fan of the genre. It was written and directed by Magnus artistic director Tom Curry, who was inspired by his own experience losing his mother. He says those songs are near and dear to his heart.
Because that was a time when all of a sudden country music, more so than any time in previous history, started just crossing over. You had Dolly Parton, who was on the pop charts and the country charts.
Samantha Piper plays daughter Caitlin. She says the play is a challenge, but one she's excited to take on.
Honestly, this is a really fun one for me because it's something I've never been able to do before, which is to get the opportunity to play instruments while acting in a musical, which is so much fun and a real challenge.
My ears still ring.
The new outdoor theater has been modified with risers and new chairs to improve the audience experience. Mama's Country Record Collection runs until July 29th. The soft launch was Thursday night, and if that performance is any indication, then audiences are in for a treat.
Yeah, nodding along. We got some woos and claps. I think people were having a real party. It was awesome.
Kids with Sherbrooke School's summer learning program got a lesson in fire safety today.
Firefighters dropped by to give the students some potentially life-saving information and demonstrate their firefighting equipment. Mike Lang has the story.
It's never too early to learn about fire safety, and the young summer students at Sherbrooke School got a special treat on Friday morning as members of the James Street Fire Station taught the kids about how emergency calls are received, the importance of smoke detectors, and how to react in the case of a fire.
A lot of the kids go home and ask their parents if their smoke alarms working, if they have them. It's their first line of defense. If there is a fire in their house, then get out safely. We really preached here to get out and stay out, so kids learn that, we'll go get their pets, we'll go get their favorite toys once the fire is all safe and not to go back in.
Something that they need to be aware of, right? You got smoke detectors in the house and scary loud noises, and when those things go off, we got to know what to do. So fire department was happy enough to come down here and spend some time with us and talk about some safety stuff.
The kids then had the exciting opportunity to sit in the front seat of a fire truck and were shown the many features of pumper number 4.
What was your favorite part about today?
Looking at the equipment. I learned how the extinguisher works.
When they said something in the microphone and one of the people who work there said something, I liked that. I was so interested.
In addition to the notion of get out, stay out, Captain Curry says it's most important for young kids to memorize their home address in case they're the ones making a 911 call in an emergency.
Time is of the essence in those situations for sure. If they know their address, then they can punch it in and we get the right resources to that house as quick as possible.
Do you also want to inspire some kids to become firefighters?
Oh, for sure. You always see if a fire truck shows up, a lot of the kids will come and ask a lot of questions, see what it is. We had one about 2 weeks ago at another school where a kid was like, oh, when I turn 18, because he wanted to know how old he needed to be. So I was like, oh, you have to be 18. So I think he was 6 or 7. So we were doing the math and he was like 12 years from now, he's like, I'm going to see you and I'm going to be a firefighter. So it's pretty special for sure.
Curry and his fellow firefighters visit schools on a regular basis to make sure kids remember what to do in the case of an emergency. Mike Lang, TBT News.
Well, turning to weather now, Fiona, you warned us yesterday that it's going to be a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and everything thrown into one, and that's exactly what we got.
The whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
One of my favorite terms. And that's exactly what we had. We had a cool night, a low of 8. We warmed up to 25, and the humidex actually hit 29 earlier in the day. We had sunshine to start, then we started seeing a few more clouds. Then we had pop-up showers, and they were pretty heavy when they popped up. Even the wind couldn't make up its mind. In the morning, it was completely calm at times, stayed light, and then it actually started rotating around for the most part. It was mostly from the west, up to 27 kilometers per hour. But when the wind started to kick up later on in the afternoon, at times it was up to 43 kilometers per hour. I'd say that's the kit and the caboodle. Now, to the west, Fort Frances had a fairly cool day. Temperatures, even at their warmest, were well below normal, which should be about 25 for this time of year. They're currently at 18, and I think they topped out at about 19. And again, they too saw a little bit of everything in the sky: sunshine, cloud, and some possible showers. It's a little warmer at this hour in Kenora and Dryden at 21. Red Lake was mostly cloudy, but they did have a couple of brief showers this afternoon. They're currently at 17 Celsius. Now, as you head into Sioux Lookout, They're warmer at 26, but then it cools down again as you head into Pickle Lake and Armstrong and Greenstone, where they had some increasing clouds and some brief afternoon showers. So they warmed up so that the humidex was sitting at about 26 a couple of hours ago, and then the thunderstorm hit, or sorry, the rain shower hit, and that just cut the humidity and the temperatures right down, so that's why it's so much cooler. Also cool along the North Shore, and Sault Ste. Marie currently at their high of 24. They started out with lots of sun, but it has been increasing all afternoon. Now, here in the city of Thunder Bay, we are looking at a low of 15, and there is a risk of an evening shower, possibly an evening thunder shower, and that's because areas around Thunder Bay and further north into about the Greenstone area are under a severe thunderstorm watch at this time. That's not a guarantee, but all the elements are in place for a thunderstorm to pop up. Then Saturday, it's actually looking pretty calm. Rain will move out. We've got some pleasant temperatures, almost seasonal moving in, some sunshine. Unfortunately, it's not going to last very long, and I'll have more details on that later on in the news hour.
Okay, thanks a lot, Fiona. Well, another brazen and seemingly random act of violence in Toronto. One person is dead following a daytime shooting in that city. We'll have all the details when your Friday News Hour continues after the break.